All right, my friends, welcome into episode 147 of the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. 147 episodes. Wow. Episode 150 is right around the corner, and I am so excited about it. You know, when I launched this podcast in January of 22, I'd have never bet we'd make it to 150 episodes. And here we are. The middle of July 2024 is when episode 150 is going to drop. It's going to be my special midweek episode with Todd Bloomer and with Dominic Armano, and I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be a celebration, and probably celebrating a little bit more than just episode 150, but we'll get to that when the time comes. For right now, let's talk about episode 147 because that one's pretty spectacular as well. My guest on the show is Pam Marcheski. And I'll tell you this about Pam. She's the visionary force behind a company known as Intentions to Actions Leadership. So their work is all about revolutionizing leadership by focusing on mindfulness, by empowering individuals and organizations to really get crystal clear about their work, both personally and professionally. And if you've paid any attention to this show, being crystal clear and being intentional are two things that absolutely sing to my soul. And that's what this episode is all about. Pam and I talk about mindfulness. We talk about really thinking through our actions. We talk about what happens when we look at both consequences and actions connected to behavior. We talk about being proactive. We talk about being reactive. All the things that I absolutely love, all the things that I think make such a difference in leadership. Man, folks, this is an episode you don't want to miss. You don't want to skip over. Yes, you want to hear episode 150, but you definitely want to hear episode 147, and you're going to get the whole thing right after this. If you follow the show regularly, you know that a couple of the pieces that I talk about consistently with leadership, with great leadership, are number one, being really clear about what matters to you, and number two, being intentional about the work that you do, how you use your time, how you communicate, all of those critical pieces. Today on the show, I'm joined by Pam Marcheski, and we're going to talk specifically about the intentional side of that equation. Pam, thank you for joining me here on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So Pam is joining us from sunny San Diego, one of my favorite towns in the entire country. I don't have to ask you how the weather is because it's always beautiful in San Diego. But let's do this.
We have our days,
yeah.
But for the most part, it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, and most people would take even your not so good days in San Diego over much of what they have. So let's do this, Pam. Let's kind of maybe set our listeners up a little bit, our viewers up for a little bit about who you are to kind of frame our conversation today. So share with folks whatever you'd like to share about your journey, about who you are, and about what you currently do.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It has been a journey, but it's been a great journey. So. Right now, as you said, I'm in San Diego, but I've been here about 6 years. But truly, my career started way back decades ago when I spent about 25 plus years in retail, corporate retail and store operations, and kind of fell upon it as a single mom. I had gone to school to do political science and law, but my journey changed. And I was really grateful for the opportunity. I had been doing retail when I was in school and found that I really did enjoy it. And I loved every part of it, the merchandising, the numbers, the people, leading teams. And, I was just really grateful. I started with Sears and they put me on a journey that really gave me a lot of opportunities. So my son and I moved all throughout the country. In many different places. I moved that boy a lot. Alaska, Montana, Washington, all over. But great experiences, and got to meet lots of different people and lead lots of wonderful teams. And then I went to JCPenney's and I spent about 13 years with JCPenney's. So my last role there as a vice president for JCPenney's is kind of when things started to shift a little bit for me. My son's grown. He's off doing his thing. I'm living in Seattle, and just really noticed that the conditions of the world have changed a lot. And what I tell people is I noticed that not that I didn't have a good toolbox. My toolbox got me somewhere as a leader to the place that I was in, but I found myself a little bit too reactive sometimes, not really being as present as I wanted to be when I was visiting stores or with my team. Nothing alarming, but I knew it. I could feel it. I could also feel myself reacting a little bit too defensively on certain things and really just not being responsive and not showing up the way I wanted to. And that's when I found mindfulness and started practicing it. And honestly, I fell upon it truly because I lived in an airport and I fell upon the book 10% Happier by Dan Harris. And I just loved it because it was an easy read, but Dan made it so real, like practical and ways to incorporate into your daily life. And I started to practice. And I just found that it was so useful. It wasn't changing who I was as a leader, but it was giving me space. I always say space is grace. It allowed me to be more present and make some decisions for myself. So that were not reactive. And that's why I just found that very, very useful, extremely useful. And then as I transitioned out of my corporate life, I knew I wanted to get back to California. My son was here. My family was in Pasadena. And truly, I came down here with really not any intention of going into mindful leadership in total. But I took the course NPEAK at UCSD, which is a mouthful. So I'll say mindful performance, enhancement, awareness, and knowledge. But it really is designed by the UCSD's neuroscience department and mindfulness department. And I love the course because it wasn't just about sitting somewhere for a long period of time. It was really about positive psychology, strengths, and mindfulness, but really seeing how our reactivity, how to work with the stressors, the stories in our head, and how to show up really and have your highest performance. So I loved it. And I just saw such a perfect connection with this course and traditional leadership. It wasn't that it was going to change leadership development, but taking it from the internal so that you can lead externally. And made the decision to stay. And a wonderful teacher. He's my coach now. And spent a year getting certified. And that really is how intentions to actions came to life.
That is such a cool story. And honestly, I mean, you said it really is a journey. Going from, the hard driving corporate lifestyle to first finding your own mindfulness, and then now to helping others capture that mindfulness and to be really intentional about what they are doing and being present in the moment. I really like how you talked about that. And you took me back to, honestly, sometimes in my leadership career where I think the focus was so much more on getting it done. I even one year, no kidding, my leadership team, our saying for our leadership team was GSD, get stuff done, except we were a little stronger than the word stuff, right? It was, we're going to get it done. And it was so much just focus on that we really weren't focusing on ourselves. And we probably were not. I won't speak for the rest of the team. I'll say me. I know I wasn't as present as I should have been at all times. I've got a myriad questions here. Let's go back to when you were starting to notice this in yourself. What were some of the things, just the little telltale signs that maybe other leaders might also say, oh yeah, I do that too. I didn't realize that. What were some things that stood out?
Yeah. Some things that were pretty vivid to me. It's just even how I was responding in an airport. I'd show up and just be, really fast and shut down. And just even around other people, you can just feel it in your body, and you can just see judgment sometimes where it's like, as if everybody's there for me kind of thing. I'd start to notice some of those things. or emails, responding to emails really, really fast versus taking a step back and saying, is this necessary to respond to at all? How do you take a pause on that? And I really noticed too, and one of the things that, I look back on and what I recognized then was because communication is so easy today and there's so many different ways, the breakdown in empowering your team. The team has become so reliable on getting a quick response. And really part of leadership is empowering your team to sit back and make decisions and have that internal confidence. But I could see such a breakdown in that because I was always communicating. I was always responding. So it wasn't anything that they were doing. It really was me. So really thinking about how I responded to certain things or not at all, asking questions, and really encouraging people to find their own answers. So really had to kind of kick the ego in the butt a little bit in a lot of ways. Technology, really just noticing, I had 2 phones, 2 iPads, 2 computers. How do I remove some of them? And is that really necessary? And that alone, like just even having the presence of some of those things, right? You can just feel the energy around it. So those were some areas that I really noticed. I hate that I had it. I got rid of it a few years ago. The iWatch, and I would tell people, I'm here 100% for you, right? But are you really? Because I don't care what you have turned off. It's still dinging you, right? There's some kind of energy there, right? And the light and stuff like that. So yeah, I could just see that reactivity a little bit more than I wanted it to be. I mean, then in my own self personally, not just for my team, but my own self, I would really like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning thinking I need to settle his mind down, like taking a drive. That's not a smart thing to be doing, right? So those are some of the areas where I really noticed.
Yeah, you're taking me back to my time, certainly as a building level principal, and now when I'm working with school leaders and or like I'm at a conference or even when I'm in an airport, which is frequently, if I see somebody who has 2 cell phones, I just I cringe, and it's not for them. I cringe for who I was when I had 2 cell phones, when I had the work phone and the personal phone, and it was just the constant, always going. When I was at home, I was still at work, that type of thing. And I think a lot of leaders struggle with that, especially right now. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on leaders to get things done. On the school side where I spend most of my time, but I think this is true in the corporate world too. There are all these different things that can capture your time, can steal your time, and every one of those things will feel like they're important, but there's always that underlying, like, you have to fix it, whatever it is, right? I mean, it's always context specific. It could be anything from student achievement to revenue streams, profit margins, whatever, right? As the leader, you have to fix it. So how do you support leaders? What are some things that leaders can do to maybe take a little step back, get a little bit more mindful, and not get so stuck in it? You already hit one, and I'm going to come back to it because it's one of my favorite with empowering others. But what are some other things that they can do?
Yeah. It's hard today. It is extremely hard. We can talk about mindful leadership. We can write a zillion articles. You can read everything you want on LinkedIn and anywhere you can. It is very difficult today. I don't say this easily as if, anybody can just flick it on. It takes a great deal of inner confidence. It takes a great deal of real commitment around a practice. And it really does take having courage. One of the competencies we teach in the MP course is courage. Knowing when, like, this is really hard and acknowledging it, but creating some boundaries for yourself is really, like, one of the number one things you can do is create some boundaries. You talked about the 2 phones and everything else. I was talking about complexity times rate minus boundaries will equal your mind state. So if you've got all this information coming into you all the time and it's really, really fast and you have no boundaries, you can't expect that your mind's really going to operate at an optimal level. So if you take the equation, you have to make some decisions, right? It doesn't have to be one thing, and it's not the right thing for everybody. So complexity. How much information do you really need to take in? How many different ways are you taking information in? And really sitting with, is that is an absolute truth, or is it a choice just because it's become part of your habit pattern? So making some intentional, and it can just be small shifts. It can be small shifts in how you use certain things that are coming in and into your routines, right? Rate. One of the ways you can shut down the rate is turn off your pop-offs. If you're in front of a computer or if you're out with presence with people, whatever you can do to remove all the alerts and all the other things that removes you away from being present, do it. And that's really hard, especially in corporate cultures today, because technology is amazing how we can work in different places. But if you're working on something, and this happens all the time, I just heard about this recently, you're working on something and you get a pop-up and the email is from your boss or somebody else. Now, that's a tough thing, right? Because your nervous system kicks in. Do I respond? Do I not respond? Just in the noticing of how you're reacting can slow down your reactivity. All right, this is uncomfortable. I'm feeling agitated. I've lost focus. And then making a decision. Do I want to respond or do I just hold back? Right? So really be more intentional in those things and not just giving in and running into it. There's a discipline to it. It's a practice.
Absolutely. It really, really, really is. I want to go back for just a minute. I want to talk just a little bit more. I want to make sure we don't skip past this. So mindfulness, performance, enhancement, and knowledge. So that's the MPEAK, that's the certification that you earn. Talk a little bit about that process. Like what took you in that? I mean, I think we kind of know what took you in that direction, but what made you want to go even further with that? Go all the way to the certification level. You said now that person is working, or your teacher is now your coach. What really hooked you with that?
You know what? I loved it because it just made sense in the world that we lived in today. It really was about paying attention, non-judgmentally, with intention to really see what are the conditions you're operating in. MPEAK does such a great job of teaching the competencies. I call them internal competencies: open, courage, non-attachment, all of these competencies that come with MPEAK. And then you tie them back. What I do is I tie them back to the external competencies of leadership, decision-making, strategy, communication. Because in today's world, if you don't have the internal competency of balanced effort, which is one of them, then you're more reactive. So when we teach balanced effort, we teach people how to see when they're just being reactive rather than creating a little space. And that focus is a big competency in MPEAK. Well, it's hard to have focus today, right? It's so many distractions. So what I love in MPEAK is in this module is you can really learn not to think that you're going to remove all the distractions, but to be aware of them and you have to respond to them. So you can still be fully present even with all the distractions that are going on around you. That's what I love about this course. And that's why I love teaching it. And that's why I like guiding it, because it's not about judging all the conditions or thinking you're going to change them. It's how do you respond and take your performance to the next level within all those conditions.
What I love so much about that, something that I am very fond of saying, is focus on what you can control and let go of the things that you can't. And it's easy to say it, but in many ways, that's helping to take you to that next step. That's helping you really get focused on what you can genuinely control and maybe even arm you with some strategies or some tools to really lean a little bit further into that. Maybe just talk just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think when you can be non-attached to something. We call it non-attachment, right? And you're not just, you had spoke to it, right? Drive, get the results, get it done. You get really attached to that outcome. What we recognize is that that actually slows down your creativity. It makes you less open and aware of maybe other options to even a better outcome. So it's not even just about not attaching to the outcome. It shuts down a lot of your creativity, questioning, and it really pushes the judgment because we just got to get there, get the result. So when we focus on non-attachment, it's not about, we're not going to put our effort in, because courage, focus, all of those mean we're going to move forward, but without the idea that we can actually own all the conditions, right? So it's building that internal courage of acceptance, and acceptance is a really big piece. That's hard when something's important, to accept that you don't have that total control.
Yeah,
So much more fun with curiosity.
Yeah, but I think that gets at a big core struggle so many leaders have with delegating. And, especially those who will say, I'm not a micromanager, I'm not a micromanager. Typically, they say that because they're a micromanager. Folks, if you didn't listen to my episode with Danya Ball, go listen to that little piece on micromanagement, because that's what I'm getting at here. But it's that lack of willingness to let go of. And I said I was going to loop back to this, and I am. I love that you talked about empowering others. That maybe delegate isn't even the right word. It's trusting others to do the job that you've hired them to do and not doing it for them. What are some strategies that you use to support leaders to helping them allow those other leaders around them to do their work?
It's, we can say that so simply, right? But that's really hard in today's environment. When somebody's breathing down your neck to get a result, or, it's the stakes are high, and you have to allow others, to make some decisions. It's tough. It really starts within your own self. Really empowering others comes with trusting in your own self and knowing that you might not all have all the answers, and that you really have to believe in your people. And that's really taking a good gut look at it. Am I confident? Do I have my own internal confidence? Because when you have your own internal confidence, it's much more easy. I guess the word, I don't know if easy is the right word, but that internal confidence helps you to be able to trust others, because your ego isn't kicking in. It's not all about you, right? You can see that. That in leading other people, that is a gift. Like, if you can really, like, one of the things I talk about all the time is it is a gift to get to lead other humans, so if you really honor that gift, then even if it's uncomfortable, you have to see how important it is to let people make their own mistakes sometimes and let people flourish. But that's a lot of work. It's not a simple sentence. It's really understanding your own self, the confidence in your own self, and having the courage to allow it, even when it's uncomfortable. I tell people too, you don't have to go into the deep end on this. Dip a toe in the water. Start with some simple things. Just notice some habit patterns of, do you get up in the morning and if you see a bad result, or if you see something, do you immediately send off a group text or a group email? Or do you sit back and pause and allow them to take in the information? Allow them to see what they need to respond to. Or if you read something on the media that's affecting the market or whatever, the business that you're in, do you immediately send and tell everybody they've got to, what are your habit patterns? And when you see that and just dip a toe in the water, you can start to make some small changes, and then it just gets easier.
I think that's huge right there. Each piece that you have talked about has taken me back in my own mind to certain stages of my career and certain times that I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about those around me. And certainly trusting in others starts with trusting and believing in yourself. And I think a big piece of that, you touched on it, that right now it's really, really difficult because demands are high, expectations are high. The word accountability has taken on a pretty heavily slanted definition, where it's truly a broad word. It really kind of resides in one small space, which is results or your job. So often is where it ends up. It ends up being. I'm taken back to those moments in time when I felt probably at my most confident as a leader, and it was in allowing my team to do their work and trusting in my team. And the thing is, and I think this is an important piece for all leaders, aspiring leaders, veteran leaders, and everybody in between, that sometimes that confidence is going to ebb and flow. It's not something that you just achieve a certain level and then you're just there. There are going to be those events or those transitions in your team or transitions in the board that you work for or whatever that may cause some of those shifts. With the work you do with intentions to actions leadership, how do you help leaders show up? I love it. You say the words show up. Two of my favorites also. How are we going to show up every day? How do you help leaders show up to be their best selves and really be the best leader for people that they can be?
Yeah. I really, when I get to, if I'm one-on-one coaching, I really tell myself every morning too, what a gift, right? So we're just doing an offering for people to explore. And I believe that everybody can find their own answers. So it's really guiding people with questions so that they can find their own way, because it's not Pam's way, but we have to internally trust our own way. On a more practical and tactical level, with organizations and companies, I do the stop, drop, and roll of mindfulness. And so I make the M kit is one of the things that I do that I share with everybody, because mindfulness is intangible and humans do the tangible. So we took the mindfulness and we made it tangible. So in the M kit, and when I do the presentations on it, I teach the stop, drop, and roll of mindfulness. So within the M kit, you get tangible things that you can put in front of you so that it can support you throughout the day to remind you to stop, pause, and respond rather than just react and be owned by it. So for example, just noticing your habit patterns, so I go through the neuroscience of it, but also just really how do you start to notice some of your daily routines and just practice that for a week. You don't do anything else, just notice. And it's amazing what you'll see. Then grounding. How do you sense into your body? Nothing that's happening in the mind isn't showing up in the body somewhere. And it is more important now than ever to understand the realness of that. Because how we notice that, we'll notice how we need to take care of ourselves more, right? That the mind is a muscle, but that muscle that's being pushed all the time needs us to pay more attention to our physical sensations. So sensing in can allow you, right? Just doing that lets you slow down your prefrontal cortex and your parasympathetic nervous system. I always say those are like the crazy parts of you. And if you want to respond, those two can't be going like crazy. You need to bring them back into alignment. Grounding helps to do that. So we give a compass to remind people to stay present and get grounded, a timer so that you can have a tangible reminder in between meetings to just stop and breathe for a solid minute, because we know that the nervous system and the mind really do need intentional breathing. And we're very shallow breathers today. So our world has evolved that we're not as physically moving. And so our breath has become rather shallow. So it's not just about breathing. A lot of times you'll see on mindfulness, just stop and breathe. No, there has to be intent around that. And it needs to be a deeper breath. So we teach how to do the breathing. So how to ground, notice, ground, breathe, and then taking in all the senses. So I do a fun exercise with some raisins. They're really good raisins too. To really start to take in all of your senses. So open up your creativity. And then we teach rain. And that is recognize, allow, investigate, and non-identify. And that's really a powerful way to respond rather than react. So with leaders and organizations, I like to make it practical and tactical and make the intangible tangible to help them.
That's outstanding stuff. I love that so very much. Folks, we'll have links down in the show notes for you to go and check out everything that Pam is talking about, so you can get connected with that. Pam, we're at that point already in the show, man. This is just going by so fast. The same question I ask everybody here on the show, the same one that we wrap up the show with everybody. This is the Leaning into Leadership podcast. So, Pam, tell me, how are you leaning into leadership right now?
Yeah, I love this question. I love that you ask it, everybody. I love the focus of your podcast. And, recently, I guess in the last few months, I'm really working on acceptance. I'm really starting to notice, where I noticed that I was kind of clinging on for a result. It's kind of that drive. And so I've really been leaning into that acceptance part of doing all that I can and letting go, the constant check back, things like that. So acceptance and presence has been one that I'm continuously always working on. I did improv classes this year as well. I wanted to, just that creative silliness, laughing at ourselves. Loved every part of that. So that's been really great. And then having my own coach. I started that and I love it. I mean, my coach, I can trust him completely, and it's made all the difference for me.
Absolutely. Everybody benefits from a coach. I have one as well. And it makes a huge difference when you've got somebody who, can just be that sounding board, somebody to listen to you, maybe give you a little bit of guidance, but most importantly, and you said it earlier, help you discover the answers that you already have. I think just makes such a big difference. So, man, this has been so much fun. Pam, people are going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to want to check out Intentions to Actions Leadership. Tell them, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is from social media. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and that's a great place to connect with me. I'd love to connect with everybody. And then my website, www.intentact.com. So intentact.com. I know you'll have it in the show notes. We love the name because the whole point is Intentions to Actions Leadership. How do we close the gap? So the name itself closes the gap. Intentact.com is a great place to reach me. You can email me at pam@intentact.com as well. I respond to everybody.
Outstanding stuff. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Leaning into Leadership podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy. Yeah.
All right. How good was that, right? I told you this was a great episode. I'm so glad that you stuck it through and you made it through this episode because, man, I really appreciate Pam Marcheski and I really value the conversation that she and I had. Make sure you hit the show notes, grab those links that are down there so you can get in touch with Pam Marcheski and learn more about Intent Act today. And now it's time for a pep talk. All right, folks, we are at the end of June. We are midway through the year 2024. And I really want to speak more to those of you who operate on the traditional calendar, not on the school calendar. Yes, that's right. On the school calendar, this is the end of your calendar, and you're going to turn a new page starting on July 1st. But for most of us who operate on the traditional January to December calendar, this is the midway point. This is a good time for us to take a step back, get up on the balcony, and think about the goals we had this year, the things we're trying to accomplish, and how are we doing so far? What's going well? What are we challenged with? And what are the things we need to do to make sure that 2024 ends the way that we originally planned? Take the time, get up on the balcony, take a little bit of stock of where you're at. Don't be harsh to yourself, but also don't be dishonest with yourself. Take a good look at what you've accomplished. Take a good look at where you are and where you want to be, folks. It's the only way that you accomplish those goals is if you take the time to take that step back and reflect. Well, that's what I got for you, folks. Take it for what it's worth. Get out there. Have a road to awesome week.